Hi, I'm Dr. J. Franklin Schultz. Thank you for joining me today. I want to talk about the topic of whether your smile can kill you. I don't usually use these videos to do training in terms of tactics and how to act out on the street because this is about your mental and spiritual well being and how that can affect the well being of your relationships. But one of the things that I noticed over the years uh, was that people would say, Joel, you just don't smile very often. Or they would ask my kids, does your dad ever smile? And why does he look so whatever? Well, I want to tell you, I was a happy young person. And not that I'm not happy now or I wasn't happy during my police career, but when I went into policing, I was young. I was 21. I was skinny. I was about 140 pounds. And I really hadn't had a lot of life experience that kind of toughened me up or knocked me around. I was not involved in sports. I hadn't done a lot of things that involved aggression or taking authority. I was a confident person, but the police officer role was something that I had to grow into. And one of the things that I had to do, and I did it by practicing in front of the mirror, was to get the face. The face that said, don't mess with me. I'm in charge. I don't care what you think about me personally. This is going to happen. And I'll tell you, it had a lot of benefit and a lot of influence in how I survived and how I managed to manage my authority. Now, that doesn't mean that I was a jerk. It doesn't mean that I lorded my power over people. It didn't mean that I came off as cocky or know-it-all. It was just a confidence, all right? So I want to talk about two terms today that are important for us to understand. One is congruence, and the other is mirroring. Now, when we are conversing with someone, our voice, our tone, our volume, our inflection, our posture, and very importantly, is what I want to talk about most today, is our facial expression. We have macro expressions, is a person happy, sad, smiling, laughing, depressed? You can tell all those things just by looking, right? But there are also micro expressions which don't necessarily even consciously register in our awareness, but they register with us. And typically, let's talk about a peer-to-peer conversation, people that we have some degree of social intimacy with, we're comfortable with, we're not competing with, we're not angry at the moment, we're just having a conversation. Our tone of voice and our posture and our facial expressions, the mood that we show, the emotions that we show, are going to be very similar to one another. It's called mirroring. And that's how we kind of zero in empathetically in conversing with somebody. You've heard the old saying that people that have been together, 50 years married, start to look like each other. Well, that's partly because old people tend to look like old people, as I'm beginning to learn, but also because there really has been a lot of mirroring and a lot of empathy over the years, and you do subconsciously try to be in the same place as the person that you're communicating with. Now, when there's a difference, when I'm talking to a subordinate, or when I'm talking to a person of higher rank, or when I'm talking to a child, or when I'm trying to debate and make a point, or when I'm trying to assert my authority, all those kinds of relationships will reflect in a different posture, a different vocal tone, and different micro and macro facial expressions. So what we have is a certain expectation of a person in whatever role that they have. We come home, and I'll just take myself. I come home, or since I'm retired, my wife comes home, and we can kind of measure already: has this been a normal day? And that sets the tone before any words are spoken. The moment we have eye contact and we see each other's facial expressions, we know if there's something that we're just aching to say, or if we're tired, or if it's been very difficult. And we just all have the human capacity to do that. We even do that with strangers because the basic facial expressions of our micro and macro expressions, those basically are the same cross-culturally. Now, intonation and posture and those kinds of things may vary from culture to culture, but facial expressions are really remarkably consistent throughout all races and cultures. And so it's very telling. And when we see somebody whose facial expression gives us the message that they're at a different place than we are, then there's incongruity. And so when we have incongruity, our nature is to try to find a place where we either go into a defensive posture or we try to go into a relational posture, which would be mirroring. Now, how is this relevant to our mental health? Well, in two ways. One is that research tells us, and we've heard this for years, and there have actually been some experiments that have indicated that this is true, that when we smile, we actually activate a set of muscles which activate some slightly different brain chemistry, and our brains recognize that smiling posture as happiness and feeling good. And so whether you're really happy or not, and if you have to, in fact, the way the experiments were done is they put a pencil in a person's mouth, which required them to have the musculature of a smile. So if you force yourself into a smile just like this, and you do that for a period of time, I'd suggest maybe a minute, you'll actually start to feel happier and a little bit more at ease. And so I would recommend that that's a good exercise. Here's the problem with that. When people say we're too somber, we're too stern, we need to smile more, we need to be happier when we're interacting with people in the public in our role as a police officer, that creates incongruity because of people's expectations of how we're going to be and act when we talk to them. You know, on a sitcom, when you see the husband come home and the wife is just super happy and has the favorite meal made and is, you know, rubbing the husband's shoulder, if that's not something that happens every day, then the husband's going to be, okay, what's going on? And in the sitcom, we know that, you know, the credit card bill came in or she put a dent in the car or something like that. We know that because there's an incongruity, and that creates tension. Now, we do not want tension in a contact with a pedestrian or motorist or suspect, okay? So if we go up and we've got this really goofy, happy smile on our face, or we have, "How you doing, sir? Glad to see you. Hey, just want to talk to you for just a minute." That feels good to us, but there's two problems with that. The first problem is that because when we smile, we tell our body, and our body responds to be, okay, we're in a safe place, we're in a happy place, we're in a good place, we're in a good mood. That's not a good protective posture for a police officer to be in, right? It literally is going to lower some of the response times and some of the caretaking responsibilities that our a little bit more stern, cautious look is reflecting and creating. So it's going to affect our ability to change into, this is serious, this is life-threatening. So we don't want that to happen. The other thing that is going to happen, is going to create, is particularly to a person who really is guilty. And we know how when we talk to somebody as a police officer, they're going to have a little bit of anxiety, they're going to have a little bit of retreat, they're going to have a little bit of hesitation, they're going to have a little bit of guilt. So we know what that normal reaction is. And when we pull somebody over, for example, and they're super nice to us, bing, 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 that's a warning flag, right? If they're super over the top nervous, bing, 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 that's a warning flag too. So we kind of have an expectation of what a normal level of anxiety and concern or even upsetness and anger is when a police officer encounters a citizen. The citizen, by the same token, has an expectation of what the police officer is going to be like. And happy and smiling is really not the expectation, no matter how nice we might think that would be. That's not the expectation that a citizen has when they encounter a police officer. So that's going to create an incongruity that's going to create tension. And sometimes what happens when, and you know these guys, police officers that say, I just want to have the good old boy casual approach in policing. And by the way, we're all taught the standard approach. Good evening, ma'am. I'm Officer Schultz with the Warrensburg Police Department. The reason I contacted you today is because of the stop sign violation that I saw back there. I need to see your driver's license and registration. All right, that's kind of the standard template. And that's what I'm going to recommend, and that's good for you, and that's going to keep you safer, because if you come up with the good old boy attitude and like everything's just hunky-dory, that's going to create tension, because that's not what the motorist or the person you're contacting is expecting. So you're going to have some stress there. And then what happens is you're going to have a natural tendency to want to mirror that person's expression, which is going to kind of create a cycle of incongruity that's going to create some tension and may just make the whole thing fall apart. And you'll see that process in progress with that pedestrian contact video that's on my resource page on the website, and I really encourage you to see that if you haven't yet, as an illustration of what happens here. So obviously the mental health component of that I really want to address is twofold. One is if we're always in that mode where we never allow ourselves to smile because it seems incongruous to our own desire to stay safe and alert. And the second is that we get pressure from people to smile and to be happy and to not be so somber. And so that creates some kind of tension, and it's like, why are you bothering me, or you don't understand, and it creates some aggression. So what I'm going to do today, just in these few minutes as our time is coming to a close, is to suggest two things. One is, maybe I'll suggest three things. One is to give you this insight so that you'll understand where people are coming from when they say, why don't you ever smile? And so if you want to explain that to them, you can try. Probably not going to make any sense to them. But if it's somebody you really care about, your kids, your family, then you can kind of explain where that comes from. The second thing that I want you to know is if you are that friendly kind of good old boy approach, I really want you to rethink that, because it can create some unnecessary tension on the part of people who are expecting that professional standard template kind of approach. And again, not overbearing, not cocky, not super authoritative, just professional. They expect that, and anything other than that is going to create some tension that you don't need to deal with. And it's going to actually reduce your capacity to make that shift if something does hit the fan and you need to get into that authoritative mode and take a defensive or an aggressive posture. So the third thing is, as an antidote to that, is I want you to smile. If you have to stick a pen in your mouth and force your muscles into a smile, do that. You don't have to be in front of a mirror, but just turn those corners of your mouth up in some private place so it doesn't look like you're losing it. And just do that for about 30 or 60 seconds, a couple of times a day, when you're in a safe place, before you get out of your car as you step into your home after off duty, and you will literally feel better. And if you think about it, if you're very body conscious and you kind of close your eyes and you do that smile thing and think about, you're going to actually feel some coolness and some chemical change, at least I do, and your attitude will adjust a little bit. And again, as long as you're doing that in a safe place, back at the squad room, in your home, with people that you care about, the more you smile, the healthier that you'll be. So I hope that provides you with a little bit of understanding about why you always look like such a grouch, and that you can actually find a safe place and a time to do some forced smiling, and you'll find that you'll become a better person.